Welcome to Crimson Guitars, welcome to my home studio, welcome to a mea culpa, I suppose. So, this build, this finish, has somewhat polarized a lot of you. To the point that I actually clickbaited up the title and changed it from how to build a custom guitar to how to ruin a custom guitar, and it's worked. More of you have watched. In this video, I am going to look at my decisions, where I went wrong, what I've learned from it, and what I'm going to be doing in the next version of this design. This video was sponsored by Skillshare. More of that later. Burn it. Oh, it should be a laser. Haha, yay! All about decisions. And where one decision takes you and paints you into a corner. And the really annoying thing is that this instrument looks incredible in person. The back, not so much. It just does not come across on camera in the same way. And I really, honestly, 100%, apart from the back, really love it. Let us walk through the build right at the beginning. I have made a general decision in my life and in my builds that I don't want to rush things. And the builds previous to this, I have been working on Nebula, who is still in progress. And yes, guitars are people too. And Shred. And Shred went off-piste, as my builds tend to do. But I was not going to stop that build halfway through. Nebula needed to be finished and needed to go off to a spray booth, and that was fine. That was an unexpected and planned for delay. Shred I needed to finish, and it took far too long, and what that meant was my unwillingness to compromise on the vision for that build meant that I only had 2 weeks to build my GGBO 2021 Invitational guitar before the nominal end of the competition. And next year we are not going to be fudging with the rules, and in fact I am withdrawing myself from the vote because yeah, I think that it would be better if I did that, shall we say. It's the point of GGBO. The point of GGBO, the point of the invitational part of this competition is not the competition. I know that on paper, I'm probably a better guitar builder than most of the people in this competition, because they're not guitar builders, they're makers of various sorts, predominantly. I've been doing this for 20 years. If, you know, it's not the competition thing, it is about raising money for a cause and highlighting a cause and doing something fun and inspirational. Winning or not winning is almost superfluous. That being said, and that's why I changed the bar. It was myself and 3 other people in the competition just missed the deadline. Life is busy. I feel foolish. But back to the guitar itself. I am blown away at how well the construction has worked. Having this see-through skewer based, let's call it dowel based construction is absolutely strong enough. It's a guitar. It works absolutely perfectly. And the decision to do that then went and adjusted how I was going to move forward with the build. Now, initially I had a completely different guitar design. That would have taken longer even than this to do, and I had no choice. I just had to stop. I couldn't do that. So I started my 2 weeks and spent 2 days trying to come up with a completely new thing to do. I did not want to build a standard guitar. I did not want to build something, you know, that the average person would consider to be a guitar necessarily. And that was my first mistake, I think. I really should have, and should in general, stop pushing myself to break boundaries or come up with new ideas quite so much. It's not necessary. In much the same way that we are not doing timed guitar builds very much anymore, although I do still want to race a CNC machine, I need to stop pushing myself quite so hard to break the mold every single time I build a guitar. It's fun, it's interesting, but it is not actually what I'm here for. I'm here to teach. I'm here to teach people how to build guitars. Frankly, I should be building a 335 or a Jazzmaster or I don't know, thin line Telly or something. I should be doing those builds as well as every now and then thinking outside of the box. Okay. So, my headstock. The first headstock design, I did some preliminary tests, and the binding that went around was visually stunning. I am still incredibly happy with how that turned out, except for the fact that it immediately shattered. Once the glue had 24 hours to cure, it made the plastic brittle, and that was it, done. So I immediately had to pivot and make a change. That change was unattractive. And the third change, all of this taking time, is what we have here, which is actually a really nice headstock. And I like this headstock a lot. The point of the original design was lightweight. I do not want a guitar with neck dive, and because I've chosen this construction technique with just 2 thin plates held together with dowels, I needed to make a lightweight headstock. Initially, that was through not having very much material, and it is now through having, from the front, lots of material, but from the side, not very much at all. And I love this headstock. I really do. I have also taken off a chamfer near the tuners, which is something that I'm surprised more people don't do. There's a whole bunch of material there that isn't required. And the guitar has ended up being well balanced. There is no neck dive. It wants to go that way. And it works perfectly fine. The inlay was another thing. I could have definitely taken a more basic route to the inlay, and I spent far longer on this than I should have, up to and including the stems of the vine were made with the edge of a piece of abalone, and the edge does not have the same chatoyance, or it does not have the same structure, and it does not reflect light in the same way. In fact, it sort of sucks it in and it became invisible. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's invisible. I'm going to have to route it out and add copper and brass and bronze inlay powders in order to actually make this thing visible. I like the end result. It's a happy accident, as it were. It cost more time, and I should have avoided that. I really should have. Then we have got the skewers. That was supposed to be the pièce de résistance of this build. It was supposed to be something that makes people go, oh my gosh, wow. And in fact, the video in the series where the thumbnail is a photograph of the skewers going through and being glued and all that. That video had 20,000 more views than any of the other ones in the series, so far at least, because people are like, well, I got the response I was after, to be frank. Now, I was hoping for twice as much material. The look, I wanted a forest, a bamboo forest of skewers. Yeah, they are bamboo as well. There we go. And I think that that looks incredibly cool. It structurally is as strong as, if not stronger than, a standard enclosed guitar side. And I hoped that that was the case. I thought it would be the case. There's always the worry that the guitar will disintegrate when you put it together and get it under tension, but it did not. But again, I used half of the amount of skewers because I ran out of time and I couldn't really fulfill the vision. And it comes down to that thing again. I constantly and consistently underestimate how much time I have available, added to the fact that I will not compromise or do not want to compromise on the final vision and on the final quality and all of that jazz. It causes issues. Now, from the beginning of the concept, I knew that I didn't like or did not want the ends of the skewers to be seen. The end grain sucks in more stain, obviously, will always be darker no matter what finish you put on there. And I wanted to have a burst, a traditional looking burst, but I also wanted to hide those freckles, as it were. And that didn't work because I tried to do the burst using stain and not a spray gun or anything like that. And I really should have gone with a rattle can option, which just would have been faster, essentially. I wanted to play with stain, and if I had used water-based stains, which is an option, I've got a whole range behind me here, it would have been perfect, absolutely fine. But my original decision to have a construction of two thin plates held together with these sticks meant that I was worried about the moisture in a water-based stain unevenly applied to the plate, essentially causing unwanted cupping and warping of the wood. So I thought, well, there's an easy fix to that problem. Just use the spirit-based stain. They don't mix together as well. They don't blend together as easily. With the water-based, you can just take a wet rag and yeah, you can blend them together and make a fantastic burst. And I've done that before. I've never tried to do it with the spirit-based, to be honest. And what I ended up doing was essentially layering on too many different layers of this stain, such that when I applied the melamine lacquer, another decision, it ripped a lot of the upper layers of stain off, exposing the freckles that I wanted to hide. And I didn't like it. I should have left it at that stage. Now, let's examine the decision for the melamine. I have never used melamine lacquer on a full guitar build. I've done test samples with it before. I've built up high gloss panels of wood. I know that it does the job, but I've never done a full guitar. It is incredibly quick drying, so much so that you will brush on one layer, and when you're fitting the brush, that layer has then cured. It is also a proper lacquer, which means that if you drop a drip of lacquer somewhere where other lacquer is drying, it'll eat through all of those layers and leave a mark. And there are some marks on this guitar as a result of that. It's part of the story, but it's not perfection. I should use a spray booth. I should have taken this guitar to Crimson and used the quick finish that we put on guitars for our students when they're there for a 5 or a 6 day course. 20 minutes to apply, 20 minutes for it to dry, and then you're putting your guitar together. It's amazing. the flash coat stuff. I should have done that. It really would have been the wise decision to make. But a long time ago, I made another decision, and that was that my job here is to teach people who don't have necessarily access to a spray booth, who don't have the will or the want, I suppose, to build a spray booth at home necessarily, and compressors and spray guns and all of that jazz. Rattle cans are an option, and I'm going to go into that more, but I want to teach people and experiment with different ways of getting a really high quality finish in a small workshop at home. And the melamine, the reason we do it as a product at Crimson is because it does. It comes up with a very, very nice gloss if done properly. I didn't quite do it properly this time. So if I had used the oil finish, done and dusted, guitar together, sorted, quick, no problems, no issues. If I had used rattle cans for the spray burst, no problems, no issues, quick, done. Or even rattle cans for the final spraying of the finish. I don't really have anywhere that I'm comfortable spraying at this stage, so I avoided that. And I've, at this point, missed my deadline. And I am, as you all know, experimenting with textures. My GGBO entry last year was all about the texture and using shielding paint because I love that metallic, pewtery kind of a metallic looking, shiny feel. I love it. And it worked quite well on last year's build. It did. But it came back and bit me in the ass this time. Okay, so I'm playing with textures. I am looking outside of the guitar industry for inspiration. I am looking at potters. I am looking at metalsmiths and jewelers and watchmakers and tool makers and all of these places, glass artists. And texture is a big part in the art of guitar making. There's a book there, The Art of Guitar Making. And I thought to myself, well then, texture is going to be your friend. Why don't you create a texturized burst? Off camera and on the back, I started actually cutting in to the finish a hex pattern, a crosshatch sort of a pattern. And I love sketches, I love engravings, and the way that an artist will create depth of field and shape using a crosshatch, that appeals to me. And I thought, okay, let me do that. I'll create a crosshatch, it'll cover the skewers, it'll cover everything. I'll be able to put some stain into that cross-hatching. And it worked-ish. My execution sucked. And I said, okay, fine. I have also been running a few tests, very small tests. I don't have it to hand, on a small piece of wood with the shielding paint as a texture because it's very thick. It's got graphite powder in, I suppose it's graphite powder. Must be graphite powder. And it builds up a great texture. And here we go, fine. I'm going to create a texturized metallic burst. And I did it. And the back didn't look very good. We had this shape here in the flame maple that just didn't look good. And then I did it, sorry, there, and covered that up. And it looked okay. And I took some advice and we were talking about it and I flirted it back and forth and we're like, fine, just paint the whole back and be done with it. And it is I agree, it is a crime against flamed maple. I'm sorry. But it's iterative. And I suppose this is the point of this video. There are too many things in this build. I've added too many ingredients to the broth, and we've ended up with a nuclear warhead. That doesn't work. That really doesn't work. If I had set myself the goal and stuck to the goal, which, as stated at the beginning of the build, the chickens are making weird noises outside, I'm sorry. The stated aim of the build was to have a guitar that from the front looked like a rocket punk, retro-futuristic kind of guitar that could have been made in the 50s, but with a twist, i.e. no sides, not solid wood, maybe materials are limited, and I am actively looking for new ways of making guitars that use less materials, and that's why I wanted to do this. But with a more traditional kind of a burst. And if I'd stuck with that, please be quiet, chickens. If I'd stuck with that, the guitar would have been fine. And in fact, better than fine. Even if the finish wasn't ideal, the concept would have been whole, and I wouldn't be making a video trying to justify myself, or at least, and this isn't the point of the video to justify myself, it's for me, and hopefully you, to learn from the mistakes that I've made here. That, after all, is the whole point of the channel. So, the construction is now completely lost in the furore over how crap everybody thinks it looks. Or not everybody. Probably 75% of people absolutely hate the back. Well, 95% of people hate what I've done to the back, and a lot more people like the front because, quite frankly, I love how the front looks. That looks great. If I had designed a guitar to have this metallic texturized burst, and I had stained it black in the middle, people would be applauding in the streets. It would look great. It's the silver and the red that doesn't quite work, especially after seeing that 50s sort of blotchy, antique jazz guitar kind of a thing that I had going on. So, I absolutely regret the fact that the build got away from me. The concept got away from me. And in order to cover up something I didn't like, I did something else. And then in order to cover up that, because at this stage it's not working, I did something else. And that didn't really work, and I just ran out of time and had to learn how to say, no, we're done. Stop. Stop. The person who wins this, it is up for auction right now, will have the ability and the option, and it's in the auction, for us to strip the entire guitar down and refinish it. It's not going to be that easy there, but we'll do it. Strip it back, resand, restain with the original kind of stain, have a spray finish or something, we'll see. I love the texture on the headstock. The two different, the way this headstock works, it works so well. Having the signature on there, I mean, I could have implemented the signature better, I could have better handwriting, but that really works. I'm incredibly happy with that. I'm incredibly happy with the design, so much so that I'm going to make it again. And again and again and again. I want this to be a production guitar. I am not necessarily going to use skewers again, or dowel. I'm going to do a production instrument with air vents or vanes, much like the guitar I built called the 2020. But the concept, the shape, the look and the feel, it's much smaller. Apparently it looks bigger on camera, but this is honestly vying for my favorite guitar that I've built. It really is. I mean, I love my 12-hour. I love my 12-hour guitar, but this everything about it works for me apart from the finish on the back. So I suppose the lesson here is I made some questionable decisions. I do these things on the regular, it appears. How many of you would actually choose to have head tattoos, for example? And I allowed myself to walk away from the underlying concept of the build. Now, my job here, my plan, my mission, as it were, is to teach through example. It is not to be one of these pristine YouTubers or content creators who puts a single video out and it's absolutely perfect and there's no mistakes and there's no, no issues, because that is not life. Every single guitar build out there, there's something's going to go wrong in some way, shape or form. It just is what it is. It's making, it's working with wood, it's working with finishes and metals and people in some cases. So I'm not going to be that person. However, I think in the future I really want to have a much more concrete and planned out build. Now, I did. I've still got the drawings over in a notebook over there of what I was going to build for GGBO. But let's be honest, I would have gone off-piste on that one as well. So, yeah, nailing down the concept and stopping yourself when you've gone too far. I should have used a rattle can to create a burst over the melamine lacquer. Absolutely, I just should have done that. I've got a black can over there of radiator paint that would have done a really good job. Now, do you want to hear the biggest and worst and stupidest mistake of this entire thing? I used shielding paint, which is great because it does have the texture. But I used shielding paint on a guitar with rather more binding than any guitar should really have. I had to scrape all of this binding, front, side, and underside, because it's not in a channel, at least 8 or 9 times. In a timed build with a deadline. I am a fool. A fool, I tell you. Anyway, the concept is amazing. I hope you agree. I am sorry that I have not been able to pull the rabbit out of the hat this time. I'm sorry that this build is not the final look that I had hoped for. But I'm going to build another one, and we'll see where that goes. Now, I said earlier that this episode was sponsored by Skillshare. You guys know how much I love learning. And for the last day, I have been on Skillshare watching a bunch of different videos all about decision making. It's amazing. I was thinking about this video and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I'm like, okay, decision making, I made a bunch of really poor decisions, really, in the end. And we've ended up with this guitar. I wonder if there's anything on Skillshare about decision making. And there's loads of different videos by different people. I'm listening to a video, it's called Think Like a Trader, Strategies to Make Better Decisions by Dominic Dante. The way that he makes the decisions, he completely discounts the final result, and he's trying to proceduralize the decision-making process, and really is actually going to make a major difference in how I make the decisions moving forward, not only in guitar builds, but in my general life as a business owner and parent. My boy this morning, I don't want to go to school, I feel poorly. And, there's this 10-minute discussion with everybody in the family, well, is he going to stay home or not? He did, of course he stayed home, because, back to Skillshare.
The first 1,000 people to use this link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare.
There are thousands of amazing classes. If you sign up for an annual subscription, it's less than $10 a month. And hashtag always be learning. I work with Skillshare because I absolutely love what they do. It is designed ad-free for learning. And yeah, it's well worth checking out. Anyway, I love this guitar. I love this guitar. I should sand down the back and refinish the back. And I should tune it too. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. I stopped reading the comments under the other video a couple of days ago because it was getting me down. It was actively depressing me. I'm going to go back now that I've had a good think about it and start replying again. But please let me know what you think. Let me know what you would have done. And be constructive. I'm happy to learn. In fact, I crave it. I love you guys. Goodbye. 2 kilograms, it weighs nothing.